Who was the Chicago Blackhawks team MVP this season, and which team will be raising the Stanley Cup?
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. On today's episode, it's my Chicago Blackhawks end of the season award show. I'll also get into a full preview and dish out my predictions for this year's Stanley Cup Playoffs before I wrap things up in segment 3 with a quick injury update on 2023 third round pick Nick Lardis. Brief reminder right off the jump to go and hit that like button. Hop in the comment section below as Mailbag Monday is right around the corner, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, all of which is 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really helps me out in a massive way. One final quick shout out that I got to give as well goes out to today's sponsor, which is Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off with your first purchase. All right, happy weekend, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. The best time of the year has finally arrived, hockey fans, as the Stanley Cup Playoffs kick off here this evening. In segment 2, I'll be going through a full preview of all the first-round matchups and dishing out my predictions. But before we get into that, what I wanted to open up today's show with is my Chicago Blackhawks end of the season award show, which I've been doing here on Locked On Blackhawks. The last 3 years, I really enjoy going through and dishing out these awards to certain individuals, and make sure to hop in the comment section below throughout me giving out these awards, whether you agree or disagree. And if you do disagree, make sure to let me know which player you specifically would have given the award to instead. Starting things off, got to begin with Team MVP, who last year I actually gave out co-MVP awards to Connor Bedard and Peter Mrazek, because while it was clear the Blackhawks were putrid during that stretch when Connor Bedard was out with a fractured jaw, it was also very evident that this Blackhawks team last season would have even been more so unwatchable had it not been for the efforts out of Peter Mrazek. No co-MVP awards coming from yours truly here this year. I'm only giving it to one man, and that one man is Ryan Donato. Even though Connor Bedard, yes, led the team in scoring once again, he was undoubtedly their best and most creative offensive player. But I do think Ryan Donato deserves the team MVP for the full-on role that he played for the squad this year. First off, the offensive numbers were outstanding. Career highs all across the board for Donato, which I'll get into more here in just a second. But 31 goals, led the team in that category, 31 assists as well. Second on the squad was 62 points in 80 games. And by the way, the only reason that Ryan Donato didn't play all 82 this year, do you remember, Blackhawks fans? Oh yeah, it was because this guy was getting healthy scratched at the beginning of the season, which I find so funny. I think it kind of goes along with showing just like how unwell the Blackhawks were, I mean this respectfully, run under Luke Richardson's guidance. Like, Ryan Donato went on to be the team MVP in my opinion, and I think in a lot of Blackhawks fans' opinions, he's the team MVP, at worst the co-MVP along with Connor Bedard probably. But the guy who I and many Blackhawks fans are going to give this award to was getting healthy scratched by Luke Richardson to begin the season. I think that's a little bit telling. But 62 points in 80 games out of Donato, like I said, led the team in goals, second in points. And out of those 31 goals that he scored this year, Blackhawks fans, 26 were scored from the even strength variety. So it's not like Donato was a complete power play merchant out there or anything. He only had 5 goals on the power play. 26 of his 31 were scored at even strength. And it's not only the offensive contributions that Donato made this year, it was the well-rounded nature and how he went about his business and how he could be utilized in so many different roles by this Blackhawks coaching staff. There were times where, because of the lack of center depth, Ryan Donato would have to play down the middle, even though he's more naturally a winger. And when he did play the center ice position, he still brought the responsibility defensively. He was capable at the faceoff dot, winning 45% of his draws. And then we saw him, down the lineup from time to time on the third line. more so early on in the season under Luke Richardson. But then we also saw him up on the top line with Connor Bedard, playing on the power play, playing on the penalty kill. I talked about him still being reliable defensively, third on the team in hits, third on the team in takeaways. That to me screams team MVP because Ryan Donato was doing it in all facets of the game. And I know it doesn't really get recognized on this poor of a Blackhawk squad, but Ryan Donato was asked to do everything and he succeeded basically in every category of the season. To me, because of that, he's deserving the team MVP award. Let me know if you feel the same way down below in the comment section, Blackhawks fans. Next award I'm going to be dishing out is the Unsung Hero Award, which actually went to Ryan Donato last season. This year's Unsung Hero, in my opinion, was Ilya Mikheyev, who was another guy who was a jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife player in the Blackhawks forward group who could provide you with a little bit of everything. He was 6th on this team in points with 34, 4th in goals with 20, and I think we saw like 10 of those in the final 2 months of the season. Really good stuff when Mikheyev did get opportunities up in the lineup there in the second half. Also, out of his 20 goals that he scored this year, just the second time he's reached 20 goals in his career, 17 were scored from the even strength variety, and his other 3 were shorthanded goals, which led this Blackhawks team. No goals scored by Ilya Mikheyev on the power play this year, and he found a way to put up 20, averaged 15 minutes and 41 seconds of time on ice. Another guy, like I said, utilized in a lot of different ways. Not a ton on the power play, second unit every now and then, but a lot of good things on the penalty kill. One of the best defensive forwards on the Blackhawks. Here's a stat for you Blackhawks fans. And I don't talk about plus minus very often because I do think 95% of the time it's a garbage stat, but here's a good example of when it's not. Go and look at this Blackhawks team's plus minus as a whole. Go and do so yourself right now. Basically everyone who's played more than 40 or 50 games is minus 10 or worse. And then there's Ilya Mikheyev, who played in all 82 games this year and was a +4. Think about that. One of the second worst team in hockey, one of the worst goal differentials in the entire league, lost a ton of games this year. Ilya Mikheyev still averaged about 16 minutes a game, and he had a +4 plus minus rating. Absolutely incredible stuff. I was really thrilled with what I got out of Ilya Mikheyev and excited about him returning to the Blackhawks here next season. He gets the Unsung Hero Award here this year. Next category is Most Improved Player, and the man who's getting the award this year already has an award. It's Ryan Donato. I do think, while it's not fun giving him 2 awards in 3 categories, I think he's deserving of this one as well because no one expected Ryan Donato to be a 30-goal scorer, 60-point guy for the Chicago Blackhawks after his previous career highs, the numbers he had put up previously in his career, right? Like this was a guy who, if he reached double-digit goals, 15, 16 kind of seemed like his upside. No one really thought he was going to be on the precipice of scoring 30 and actually accomplishing that goal. He only had 12 goals with the Blackhawks last year, and I talked about his new career highs that he set this season. I think this goes to show exactly why Ryan Donato wins the Most Improved Player award. Set new career highs in goals by 15, had a new career high in assists by 13, and in points by double. His previous career high in points was 31. This year he tallied 62. He doubled that up. To me, that screams Most Improved Player. So congratulations to Ryan Donato for his second trophy here in 3 categories. Next award that I'm going to be dishing out is my Norris Trophy Award for the best Blackhawks defender. And for the second consecutive year, I'm going to be giving that to Ryan Donato. Not to Ryan Donato. He's going to be having one more award. Spoiler alert here. No, Ryan Donato did not play defense for this Blackhawks team. The Norris Trophy Award for the second consecutive year is going to Alex Vlasic, who, by the way, also won Most Improved Player last season as well. 7th on the team was Vlasic in points this year, 4 goals and 26 assists, played in all 82 games. Those 26 assists were good for 4th on this Blackhawks squad. Also averaged a new career high with 23 minutes and 16 seconds of time on ice. And while I do think the second half was definitely more so of a struggle for Vlasic compared to the first half, compared to the first half, I should say. I think there's good reason for that. And it really happened right around when the Seth Jones comments were beginning, and then he wound up getting traded. Vlasic obviously was going to take on more minutes as a result of that, becoming the number one defenseman officially. And then also he was asked to kind of step up on the power play and play in more roles than I think he naturally is inclined to do. I don't think we're going to be seeing Alex Vlasic quarterbacking the power play, considering who the Blackhawks also have on their blue line in Sam Rinzel, Artem Levshinov, and Kevin Korchinski. But he took on that role because the Blackhawks needed him to. He took on increased minutes because the Blackhawks needed him to. And he handled himself pretty well altogether for a kid who, again, I think we forget is still pretty young in his own right. He's just a little bit older than most of the kids who are on the scene right now. But 1 power play goal and 11 power play assists out of Vlasic this year really, really impressed me. And just the overall improvements that he's made in his offensive and puck moving abilities have definitely been noticeable his last 2 years on the NHL scene. And he was also first in takeaways by a landslide. He had 52. Next closest was Connor Bedard with 26. Alex Vlasic was the most effective defender for the Blackhawks all season long. Make no mistake about it, even though even he admitted the second half of the season didn't necessarily go the way that he wanted it to in terms of his consistency. And he even mentioned that the scheduling kind of wore him down a little bit. And I think the increased role also aided in that too. But Alex Vlasic, still a model of consistency on the back end. He's going to be a staple of this blue line for a long, long time. And someone who I wouldn't be surprised to see wearing a letter here in these next couple of years. Next award that I'm going to be dishing out is Biggest Surprise. This one isn't a fun answer either, Blackhawks fans. It's his third award. It's Ryan Donato, because while Most Improved is kind of a similar category, it's not as shocking of an improvement. Donato was obviously a surprise and a huge improvement. So that's why he comes away with both of these awards. Not going to dive in it too much because I outlined a little bit during his Most Improved recap and breakdown as to why Donato, I don't think anyone expected him posting this type of season, but going and looking at the rest of the Blackhawks roster, there was kind of no one who fit this category to me other than Arvid Soderblom, who kind of faded as the season wore on. Those were kind of the two guys who I was deciding between, but I ultimately ended up giving it to Donato. So the third award for Ryan Donato in my 24-25 end of the season award show here, but that's the last one he'll be getting, Blackhawks fans. Next category is Biggest Disappointment, and the man who actually is taking home Biggest Disappointment this year was the biggest surprise winner last year. It was a co-biggest surprise along with Jason Dickinson, but it's Philip Kurashev, and I think he definitely has to be the biggest disappointment on this Blackhawks squad, even though there were a couple of others. I think TJ Brody was the one who I was considering the most here, but I'm giving it to Kurashev because he's coming off a season in which he was excellent and really clicked with Connor Bedard on that top line, made the most of his opportunity, and potted 18 goals and 54 points. And this year, Kurashev wound up only playing in 51 of the 82 games, tallying just 7 goals and 7 assists for 14 points, was a huge defensive liability, a minus 28 in those 51 games. Some of the worst analytics, and actually the worst analytics of any member of this team. Not a good year from Philip Kurashev. And it was not like it was like he was shafted right out of the gate and never got an opportunity inside the Blackhawks top 6 or on that top line with Connor Bedard. No, this was a carousel up on that top line early on in the year. Luke Richardson was trying lots of different things, desperate to get anything to work, and Philip Kurashev never looked good in a top 6 role once again. And for him to wind up not even hitting the 15-point plateau this season after having 54 points last year, unacceptable. And I knew it was going to be hard for Kurashev to replicate that type of season, but I never saw him underwhelming like this. And as a result of his lackluster season and him being, in my opinion, the biggest disappointment of this Blackhawks roster, his Blackhawks tenure almost assuredly has come to an end at this point in time. Next award that I got to give out is Rookie of the Year award. That undoubtedly goes to my boy, Frank the Tank Nazar. Well, we saw lots of good things from lots of young players in the NHL, particularly late in the season. Frank Nazar was the youngster who stuck around and had the greatest amount of games, wound up playing in 52 of the 82 games for the Blackhawks here this season. And he was the one who, in my opinion, was the biggest difference maker and was arguably their most consistent player in general, not just among the youngsters, their most consistent player in general there in those final couple of weeks. 26 points in 52 games out of Frank Nazar, an excellent first legitimate NHL stint. I think he's going to be a special player for the squad for a long, long time, and I'm super excited to watch it unfold in front of my eyes. Lots of worthy shouts, but Rookie of the Year definitely goes to Frank Nazar. Last award that I got to give out here, Blackhawks fans, before I get into my preview and predictions for this year's Stanley Cup playoffs, is a fun little award that I've thrown in. Last year, I believe, was the first year I put it in there. It's the Biggest Blackhawks Legend Award. And for those of you who follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey on X, go and check it out if you haven't yet. Then you know what Blackhawks legend means. It's not a true Blackhawks legend. It's someone who had a very brief stint here with the organization, someone who, in likelihood, 5 to 10 years from now, us Blackhawks fans will be like, oh yeah, I completely forgot he was a member of the Blackhawks. And there's lots of those guys. Whenever, like Boris Kachuk, for example, that's a Blackhawks legend. And whenever he does something noteworthy that gets someone posting about him on social media, I make sure to quote tweet it with an asterisk and say Blackhawks legend. There actually weren't that many of those types of guys who found themselves on the Blackhawks roster this season, as they didn't have like as many weird trades or needing to bring in guys because of the injury problems that they had 2 years ago. That's what led to Rem Pitlick and Zach Sanford winning the Biggest Blackhawks Legends Award last year as co-winners. This year, it's only going to one man. It could have gone a couple of different ways. Could have gone to Pat Maroon, could have gone to Alec Martinez, but I think when we look back at things, we'll forget probably about this man the most, and we'll think it's the most random that he played for the Blackhawks, and that's Craig Smith. Only played 40 games here with the Blackhawks. He'll definitely be remembered more so as an NHLer for his time with Pittsburgh and the Nashville Predators. I don't think very many people in a decade will remember Craig Smith was a member of the Blackhawks, but that's exactly why he's the perfect man for this category. But I got to give Craig Smith some credit, because I thought for a 37, 38-year-old at this stage of his career, he put up better numbers and looked better than I thought he was going to here in his lone season with the Hawks. 9 goals, 7 assists for 16 points in 40 games for Craig Smith. Had some good moments down with Lucas Reichel on the fourth line. Had more wheels than I thought he was going to provide at his age. So the last award I'm giving to, the Blackhawks Legend Award, goes out to Craig Smith. That's going to close up my Chicago Blackhawks 24-25 end of the season award show. Go and let me know which awards you disagree with. Let me know your full thoughts on my award show in the comment section below, Blackhawks fans. But coming up in just a moment, make sure to stick with me as I get into a preview of this year's Stanley Cup playoffs and give out my predictions as to who's going to be hoisting the cup when it's all said and done. But first, I got to talk to you all about Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can now turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. All you got to do is grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles such as EA Sports College Football 25 or Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. And with 4K streaming, you can now watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So head on over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On in order to get started today. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire Stick, Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gens, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Segment 2, the Stanley Cup Playoffs kick off here this weekend. The best time of the year, hockey fans, has finally returned, and I will be covering the Stanley Cup Playoffs here on Locked On Blackhawks throughout the next couple of months until the winner is crowned probably in the first to second week of June is usually when things wrap up. It won't be the primary focus of my show, obviously, as I'm about to start diving into my season recaps where I'll dish out grades to each and every member of the Blackhawks roster for their performance this season, as well as my 2025 NHL draft previews. Or profiles, which are some of the favorite things that I do all year long on the show. Make sure to keep an eye out for that, but I will be covering the Stanley Cup playoffs and giving you all updates round by round here on the show as well. And with that being the case, got to get into a preview of the Stanley Cup playoffs, the first round matchups that are going to begin here this weekend, and give out my prediction as to who's going to be hoisting the cup when it's all said and done. Let's start with the Western Conference, Blackhawks fans. The one-seeded from the Central Division, Winnipeg Jets, are going to be taking on the St. Louis Blues, who earned the second and final wildcard spot in the Western Conference. Had an incredible run there in March. I believe they won 13 consecutive games, coming in with some good momentum, taking on a Winnipeg Jets squad that was in the top spot of the Central Division all year long and ended up winning the President's Trophy for the top team in the NHL. The question mark about the Winnipeg Jets, while they've had excellent regular seasons, they had an epic defense once again. Connor Hellebuck, one of the best goalies in the business. Their offense actually was right there as well, one of the best in the league, in the top power play in the NHL. The only real question about the Winnipeg Jets is, can they get it done when it matters the most? And that's been the knock on them the last handful of seasons, right? They're regularly a staple in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but they regularly don't do much with this opportunity when they get it. That's my concern, and they're facing off with a Blues team that, while it's very different from their Stanley Cup run over half a decade ago now, they still have a lot of core members and a lot of talented players, and since they brought on Jim Montgomery, a legitimate NHL head coach who did a lot of good things with the Boston Bruins previously, they've looked like a new team. I think this is going to be a great series. I ultimately, though, am going to go with the Winnipeg Jets, but I think this one is going 7. The Blues they got that grit. They got that never say die thing about them that always annoys me. I think they're going to make it a battle here in the first round, but I think Winnipeg is going to get it done in a 7th game on home ice with the whiteout, giving them a huge aid. Next playoff series we get to is the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche, which is going to be an epic one, Blackhawks fans. Mikko Rantanen, of course, traded from the Colorado Avalanche to the Carolina Hurricanes, then winds up on the Dallas Stars by the end of this year's trade deadline. And because, of course, they're going head-to-head in the first round. And then for the Colorado Avalanche, the biggest story is the captain, Gabriel Landeskog, who has not played in an NHL game since hoisting the Stanley Cup in 2022. Absolutely crazy. Has been rehabbing, getting ready for this year's playoffs, played in some AHL games late in the year. Looks like he's going to be returning to the Colorado Avalanche lineup, and that should give them a massive boost. While on the flip side, the Dallas Stars are banged up at the worst time of the year. Miro Heiskanen, who has returned to the ice, isn't going to be ready for the start of the series. Jason Robertson is week to week. And if you're someone who's listened or watched this show for a long time, then you know the Dallas Stars, I've had them in the Stanley Cup final and winning the Stanley Cup each of the last 2 years. Like, I really love this group. Didn't love them as much going into this year and some of the moves they made in the offseason. Now that they're banged up, I definitely don't have as much confidence as I had in them in years past. I'm picking the Colorado Avalanche, who have the momentum to get it done in 6 games in this series. Then we got the Vegas Golden Knights, the 1 seed from the Pacific, taking on the Minnesota Wild, who earned the top wild card spot out west. I think Vegas in their depth is just going to be too much for Minnesota to handle. Even though they got Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson Ek back, and they closed out the regular season on a high note after those 2 guys returned, I just don't see Minnesota getting it done over this Vegas squad, who has a great blue line. A lot of guys who won the cup with them are still there, and a really deep forward group who are squeezing the most out a lot of their depth guys I expect big things out of the Vegas Golden Knights here in the playoffs. I have them taking down the Wild in 5 games. Then the last series we get to out west in the first round, seems like they always meet in the first round. It's the Edmonton Oilers and the Los Angeles Kings. Los Angeles, the best home team in the NHL this season. The Edmonton Oilers, while they finally got their run to the Stanley Cup last year and have lots of experience, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, they're super banged up going into the series. Ultimately, though, Game 7's going to be in Edmonton. I think this one's coming down to Game 7 once again, and I think the talent and the skill of Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid are ultimately going to be too much for this Kings team to handle. I'm taking the Oilers in 7 games. Then, getting into the second round, that has my bracket leading to the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche in the second round, which I think is going to be an epic series. Everyone in the world and their mother is taking the Colorado Avalanche. I think they're the most picked team to take home the Stanley Cup this year. I don't see it happening. It would be a great story. I still don't trust their defensive depth, and I still don't trust their goaltending. Call me crazy, and I know a lot of people will, because as I outlined, the Winnipeg Jets just haven't gotten the job done when it matters the most this time of the year. I think that changes this year, Blackhawks fans. I'm going with the Winnipeg Jets over the Colorado Avalanche in 6 games. Then we got the Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Edmonton Oilers. This is where I think Edmonton's injury problems is going to catch up with them. Vegas, I outlined all the depth and experience that they have as well. I think they get it done over the Edmonton Oilers and get the series win in 6 games. That has me left with the Winnipeg Jets and the Vegas Golden Knights in the Western Conference Final. If this winds up playing its way out, that would be an absolutely incredible series. And I believe they actually met in the second round. I want to say it was the second round when the Vegas Golden Knights won the cup a couple of years ago. This would be an epic battle. I'm going to go with the Winnipeg Jets to reach the Stanley Cup. It feels even crazy to say here on the show because they haven't gotten it done, but I think this is the year where that changes. Not a lot of people, I don't think, are picking Winnipeg. I think a lot of people are going towards the Colorado Avalanche. Winnipeg Jets are my pick from the Western Conference this year, Blackhawks fans. Out east, in the first round, we got the Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the Ottawa Senators. That is going to be an awesome battle of Ontario. I'm taking the Toronto Maple Leafs, though, in 6 games. I think their skill is just going to be a little bit too much. However, as we saw from the Sens in the last game of the season, they're dogs off the leash, and they are going to grind it out against that Leafs squad. I think ultimately, though, the Leafs skill is going to get it done in 6 games. Then we got the Battle of South Florida once again. The Tampa Bay Lightning taking on the Florida Panthers. Not the best momentum for the Panthers heading into the playoffs. I believe they went 10-10-0 over their final 20 games. They've also had some injury problems. And of course, one other thing to consider is they've gone on deep Stanley Cup playoff runs. They've reached the Stanley Cup final, the last 2 years. Like, that's a lot of wear on those tires. And it kind of looks like it's starting to catch up with the Florida Panthers. They're also not going to have Aaron Ekblad for the first couple of games of this series. And Tampa Bay's been rolling, and they're another team with really good depth and a lot of experience. I'm going with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Apologies to my good buddy Armando Velez. I'm going with the Tampa Bay Lightning over the Florida Panthers in 6 games. Then we got the Washington Capitals meeting up with the Montreal Canadiens. I think Montreal's offense is going to be super exciting, and the offense in this series alone, I believe, is going to be really exciting. However, their defense, I don't trust it enough to get the job done. Washington is in a really weird spot, and I think no one is quite sure what to do with them in this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. I have them taking care of business in the first round, beating the Canadiens in 6 games. Then we got the Carolina Hurricanes and the New Jersey Devils, 2 teams that, without Jack Hughes in the series, I really don't care about the series at all, if I'm being honest. I've never been a huge fan of the Carolina Hurricanes. I think they run their system really well. They're a good defensive-minded squad, and I think Rod Brind'Amour is an excellent leader. I just think their organization is a little bit of a joke, and I can't believe in them to go on a long run. In New Jersey, without Jack Hughes, I think they were 30th in the NHL in 5-on-5 scoring since Jack Hughes got hurt. Against a good defensive team like the Carolina Hurricanes, I just don't see things going well for New Jersey in this series, so I'm going to pick Carolina over New Jersey in 6, but I don't have high expectations for either of these 2 teams. That gets us into the second round of the Eastern Conference playoff bracket. Would mean the Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. That will be a banger of a series if it winds up going down. I'm going to pick the Toronto Maple Leafs, though, in 7 games. I think this is a year where they could potentially get over that hurdle. I think they're going to the conference final and getting over the Lightning. Washington and Carolina. I just mentioned I don't have high hopes for either Carolina nor New Jersey in this year's playoffs. Washington, though, I said too, was in a little bit of a weird spot, but I think they got some good momentum and some good vibes in that squad, good additions at this year's deadline, and some good playoff performers. It's going to come down to Logan Thompson, though. Logan Thompson, the Capitals will go as far as he takes them. Excellent regular season. I think he's going to be good in the series against Carolina. I have the Capitals winning in 5 games. That leads me to the Eastern Conference final. The West, I had Vegas and Winnipeg. In the East, I have Washington and Toronto. And this was a really tough one for me to pick, Blackhawks fans, because do I really want to pick Toronto to go in the Stanley Cup against Winnipeg when a Canadian team hasn't won the Cup since forever, and neither Toronto nor Winnipeg have found success in the past few years in the playoffs? It's like, hey, that seems a little bit bold. I ultimately ended up going with the Washington Capitals, because how fitting would it be if in the season in which Alex Ovechkin surpassed the great 99 Wayne Gretzky to become the all-time leading goal scorer, they also reached the Stanley Cup. I think that would be awesome, and I think it's a story that isn't like that far-fetched, and I really like the Capitals' path to the Stanley Cup final as well. I just mentioned I don't have high hopes for either Carolina or New Jersey, and I really believe that Atlantic Division is going to beat the crap out of each other in those first 2 rounds. Tampa and Florida, Toronto and Ottawa. Whoever comes away from the Atlantic, I feel like is going to be super banged up when they reach the conference finals. So that's why I ultimately ended up taking the Washington Capitals. I have Winnipeg and Washington meeting up for the Cup. But what I will say is I thought long and hard about putting the Toronto Maple Leafs in there as well. And if the Toronto Maple Leafs, let's just say, for the sake of an argument, Blackhawks fans, and I can go back and look at this and pull it up if it does wind up happening. If Toronto winds up beating Washington in the Eastern Conference Finals, if they do wind up meeting each other, I will say if they beat Washington, they're going to beat Winnipeg. But I am picking officially in my bracket the Washington Capitals to take down the Toronto Maple Leafs. Winnipeg versus Washington in the Stanley Cup. And I think the Winnipeg Jets are the first team in the 21st century to win a Stanley Cup from Canada. That's my prediction. I know it's far-fetched. I know it's crazy. But when you do these bracket challenges, unlike what just happened in March Madness this year when all the chalk hit, you got to find ways to be different if you want to take home some money. And this is the way that I'm being different this year. And it's honestly how I think things are going to play out. I really like the Winnipeg Jets, even though the playoffs have been their kryptonite the last few seasons. I think this year is going to be different. I think it could be different for the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. We'll have to wait and see. Couldn't be more excited that the Stanley Cup playoffs are finally going down here this weekend. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, before I close out today's episode, still got to get into a quick update on Blackhawks prospect Nick Lardis. Real quick though, Blackhawks fans, I do got to talk to you all first about Game Time, and I don't have my Game Time ad read pulled up. I accidentally had FanDuel. Shame on me. How am I going to find Game Time in a hurry? This is a problem. This is a problem, Blackhawks fans. I apologize. Should have been better prepared than this. This is just the way that this is going to have to go. Sorry about it. Segment 3, back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen. Here to start off your weekend. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, up until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. You can get local analysis on a national scale with the coverage you love from Locked On. And you can easily find Locked On NHL Game Night right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, tough update to get into here to close out today's episode regarding Blackhawks 2023 third-round pick Nick Lardis, who, of course, became the first player since John Tavares to score 70 goals in a single OHL season this year. In Game 2 of Brantford's second-round series against the Oshawa Generals, Nick Lardis took a big hit from a Generals defender and unfortunately had to leave the game and was not able to return and has missed Games 3 and 4 in that second-round series ever since. General Manager Kyle Davidson did give us a little bit of an update on Nick Lardis' status during exit interviews, but it really wasn't much of one. He said that Nick Lardis is going to seek out a second opinion for his injury, probably going to be seeing a second doctor to get a second opinion on his diagnosis and exactly what is wrong, but definitely not the most encouraging news for Lardis, and definitely leaves me concerned about whether he's going to be able to return to the Brantford Bulldogs here in the postseason. And with all the momentum this kid's built off an incredible season, definitely a super tough blow, but I'm not going to jump to conclusions. We don't know officially how serious this injury is for Nick Lardis. However, it's serious enough that he hasn't been back on the ice since. Like I said, missed games 3 and 4. The series is now evened up 2-2 and is serious enough that he's going to have to seek a second medical opinion. Whenever we get more of an update on Nick Lardis, I'll make sure to talk about it right here on Locked On Blackhawks. Hopefully, Marek Vanacker and the rest of that Bulldogs roster can do enough to get them into the third round, and maybe Lardis will be able to return then. But a quick update on the rest of the OHL playoffs. Martin Misiak and the Erie Otters, unfortunately, had their season come to a close as they were swept to the hands of the top-seeded London Knights in 4 games. And Misiak, by the way, is someone who's already signed his entry-level deal with the Blackhawks organization, so I believe he's eligible to go and join on with the Rockford Ice Hogs. However, Misiak did miss Game 4 of the series due to an injury, and I don't know what's going on with these Blackhawks prospects, but the injury bug is just kind of going around right now. So no Martin Misiak in the final game of that series. Not exactly sure what injury he suffered or how serious it was, but definitely stinks because closed out the OHL playoffs on an incredible run. He tallied 13 points, 7 goals, and 6 assists in 8 games before suffering that injury. We'll see what's next for Martin Misiak. I don't know if it's going to be Rockford this year, but that is the next step in his journey as he's going to be leaving the OHL. That takes us to the Windsor Spitfires and the Kitchener Rangers. Jack Pridham facing off with AJ Spellacy, a pair of 2024 third-round selections going head-to-head here in the OHL playoffs. However, AJ Spellacy has also been hurt throughout the postseason. He did return for Game 1 of the series after missing a couple of games in the opening round for Windsor, but has not been back since. Has missed games 2 through 5 now at this point. Jack Pridham, fortunately, has been healthy for Kitchener. He's now up to 8 points, 4 goals, and 4 assists in 10 playoff games, and a big rally for Kitchener, by the way. They were down 3-0 in the series, took games 4 and 5 to make things interesting. Still have their backs up against the wall for Game 6, but they're fighting for their playoff lives right now. We'll see if AJ Spellacy will be able to join Windsor for the final couple games of the second round series. I'll make sure to provide you all with updates on him, Martin Misiak, and, of course, Nick Lardis whenever we know more. But that's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks. Follow Locked On Blackhawks, for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Till the next episode, everyone, enjoy your weekends. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.